Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a show dedicated to survivors of child sexual abuse. And I bring this to you every week because there is so much going on globally in this space, and it's really important that we as survivors have a safe place to land and can share our stories in a supportive and growing community. I always start with a trigger warning simply because the content is, by its very nature, triggering. So if you do start to feel triggered, please go to the show notes below and you'll be directed to some resource and support. I have a wonderful guest today, and her name is Lisa Mannina. She's from Connecticut in the States. She's a pilot, she's a survivor, she's a metastatic breast cancer warrior, and you're going to hear all about that. So, welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Hey, so as usual, or as always, what we tend to do is start with your story, what happened, the age you were, and yes, let's, as much as or as little as you're comfortable to share would be great.
Sure. Um, so my mom was married. She has been married 4 times now to a lovely man, but her third marriage was married to a man that had 3 adult children. I was 10 years old when they started seeing each other, and his middle child um, was a boy in his mid to late 20s. Um, my mom, as she was seeing what would be her third husband when they were dating, began dropping me off at her new beau's children's homes to babysit me while she was off on dates. And um, I would get dropped off at all three of them. But when I would get dropped off at the son's home, things began to happen. Um, and the first time it happened, I remembered he asked my mom if I could go for a ride with him. 10 years old. I just shrugged my shoulders, like, okay, whatever. And my mom said, sure. He was family. Um, and so he needed to go get something from his house, and we were at my house at the time. So we hop in his truck and we start driving towards his house, and he starts asking me these questions. Um, have you ever kissed a boy before? No. And do you want to know what it's like? And just kind of sat there not knowing how to answer. And before I knew it, he had pulled over into an empty parking lot. Um, Ironically, it was a church parking lot. And turned to me and asked the question again. And I just sort of shrugged my shoulders. I don't know. And before I knew it, he was kissing me and showing me how to kiss somebody. Um, Before long, I was obviously really uncomfortable, and um, that was sort of the end of it at that moment. And we got back on the road and went to his house, and I was just frozen like a deer in headlights, I think, for the rest of the ride, and
Lisa, how old
just
were
wanting
you? How old were you?
te-
You were
10
10.
years old.
Okay.
10 years old. Um, so we went and grabbed whatever he needed to get from his house, and when we got back in the truck, I was scared he was going to pull over again. I just was like, just crossing my fingers, like, please just bring me back home. And I didn't know what to make of that. I didn't know, at 10 years old, I didn't know if that was normal or not. I don't know. Um, so we got back to my house, and that sort of started everything. Um, he, over the course of 4 years, from 10 to 14, he sexually abused me, increasing in his boldness throughout, the 4 years, more and more. Um, it would happen under my own roof, in my own room, my house, which is, supposed to be my safe place. And sometimes it would happen right under my mom and stepdad's noses. We would have a lot of people over at our house all the time, and so if they were distracted by a party going on, you know, nobody would be looking for me.
Yeah.
So it happened at his house when I would get dropped off to get babysat. It happened in my own room. And that went on for 4 years until I got to a point where I was scared of him, but I didn't care. I just wanted it to stop, and I didn't care what that cost me. I didn't know what he was going to do to me, but I didn't care at that point. I'd had enough. And by that point, realized this is not normal. And, the fact that he had told me over the course of the 4 years, don't tell anybody and things like that, um, you know, obviously was a red flag that it was not a normal thing.
Yeah.
And so when I was 14, I just decided to tell him that's enough. You're not doing this anymore. And I was kind of shocked at how little effort it took to get him to stop. And at first, he tried to gaslight me and, um, tell me that, just make me feel like I was crazy. And then it switched to, I could see a sort of fear in his eyes that I was going to go tell people. And he said things like, you can't tell anybody, nobody's going to believe you anyway. They're just going to get mad at you. This is your fault. You had a part in this, and so on and so on. And I didn't care. And at that point, I didn't care to tell anybody. I just wanted it to stop.
Yeah.
And so it did at that point. And I didn't tell anybody until a while after it stopped. I told my best friend, who happened to tell my brother, and then my brother told my mom, and the lid blew off of everything.
How old were you when that happened?
14.
Oh, you were okay within that year. So, Lisa, well, what you're describing, such classic grooming and manipulation, and as you described, the gaslighting, and unfortunately, it's so well known and experienced by survivors everywhere. And hello, lovely ones. Good morning. We're lucky to have Lisa with us today. So I guess you also described that it took, you were surprised at how little effort it took. And I guess, it's interesting that you say that because as children, we're so under the authority or dominance of the adult that's tasked with caring for us that we don't perceive there's any power we have. What do you think about that?
I didn't. I didn't think I had any power for 4 years.
Yeah,
And that's why I didn't say anything to him. I didn't tell anybody else.
yeah.
And I did. I thought, I believed him. I thought that it was partly my fault and that I somehow caused it to happen or welcomed it, or I don't know. I certainly didn't feel like I had any power.
Which is exactly what he wanted you to think. Yeah. So
Yes.
that fit the narrative, didn't it, for him?
Yes.
But yes, oh well done. It's what a nightmare for you. What happened once your mother found out, if you're able to say?
Yeah, she was obviously destroyed by hearing that, and just for years and years and years, and I think she still carries guilt over it, that she didn't know what was happening, that she couldn't stop it herself, and um, guilt, I think, for being the one that brought him into the family, so to speak. But shortly after that, her marriage was at that point was already kind of rocky, and it just declined more and more from there, and ended up in divorce. At the time that she found out, she called me into the living room and sat me down, and my stepfather was there, sitting in his chair, just kind of stone faced, and um, I didn't know what was going on, but my mom just started crying and told me that my brother had told her what was going on, and she asked me, how long's this been going on, and all sorts of questions. And she, at that point, vowed to protect me and said, "This is never going to happen again. He's not allowed in the house. He's not allowed on the property, and you're safe now." And to me, it was like I already took care of it. But that felt good that she knew, and I didn't have to tell her that. But on the other hand, it destroyed her, and I can only imagine as a parent hearing that happen to your kid. Um, so, I mean, my heart breaks for her too. But
Did
yeah,
your
I think,
stepfather react at all? Was your stepfather believing and supportive of you as well, or just not so much?
yeah, I mean, he was certainly not a supportive or emotional man at any point, but um, he did seem to believe what I said, and why would a kid make this up? Um, and when they confronted his son, his son basically admitted it and said, "Well, it's her fault." So he didn't deny it; he just
Oh,
placed the blame on a 10 to 14-year-old
wow,
child.
wow.
Yeah.
Did he get convicted? Was there any police or court activity?
No, I was too scared. And I spent so long dealing with it that I just wanted it to go away at the time.
Yeah.
And I regret that now, but at the time I just emotionally and mentally couldn't handle it.
No.
And, my mom tried to get me to go to that route. And actually at one point, I think it was like a few years later, maybe, um, I still had so much anger and it was unresolved. He was still walking around, possibly doing this to other people. And at some point, I felt guilty. What if he is doing this to other people and I didn't stop him and I didn't say something about it? So I did try to go to the police, and um, they were not very helpful, and it didn't end up going anywhere. I sat and spoke with an attorney, and they basically said, this is basically a he said, she said kind of a thing, and there's a really good chance that nothing comes out of this, and you put a target on yourself, and just made me feel like it was a case that I couldn't win. So, you know, I just walked away from it. I said, I can't do this. And it didn't seem like it was worth it. And that was kind of the end of it.
Well, and so much for the advocacy of people that were tasked to help protect and support you.
Yeah.
I just, as a side note to our survivors watching, survivors, isn't it great that Lisa had her mum believe her instantly and take action instantly to keep her safe? And I know for some of you watching and for some of us, we didn't have that experience, but you can also see, what you describe, Lisa, as you then feel such guilt because of the pain mum experiences. Although, as an adult looking back now, it's better that she knew than that she didn't. It's safer that she knew than that she didn't. And as a child, you can't protect yourself. So Lisa,
Yeah.
when you think about it, and did you ever have to see him again? Was that ever something you
It
had
did.
to do?
Yes, there were two times that I saw him. Once was almost immediately after my mom and my stepfather agreed for him never to come on the property again. It was maybe a month later. My mom and I were sitting on the sofa watching something on TV, and the way that our house was situated, we had the whole back of our living room faced our backyard, and it was just glass doors. And my mom and I were sitting sort of perpendicular to that watching TV. And at the same time, we both saw something out of a corner of our eye, and it was him in our backyard. And then shortly behind him comes his father, my stepdad. And my mom was furious. She said, "Go to your room. I'm gonna handle this." And she went right out the back door, just guns a blazing, and like, get off my property. And that was really when her marriage basically ended. Um, in the moment that in his my stepdad's defense was that he didn't come in the house. And my mom said that wasn't the agreement. He's never allowed on this property ever again. And so, um, you know, shortly after that, they got divorced. But the second time was probably, um, I think I was about 22-ish. I was working at a restaurant, and I was bringing food out to a table. And lo and behold, as I'm placing the plates down, I glance up, and it's him and a woman. And I set the plates down and just sort of like didn't know what to do. I turned around and walked back and went sort of back in the kitchen, and I was just like shocked, and I had all these emotions rise up immediately. I was sad, I was angry, but anger started to bubble up more than anything. And before I knew it, I brought out his next course on purpose and looked him dead in the eye and made sure that he looked at me. And um, I said, "Don't you ever come back in this restaurant ever again." I I sort of blacked out. I don't know what else I said, but I walked away and just broke down. I went out the back door of the restaurant and just lost it. I started crying, and I had a really good manager at the time who came, he saw me, upset and walking through the kitchen and out the back door. So he came out there and checked on me, and I told him what happened, and apologized through tears, like, if you need to, you know, fire me or whatever you need to do, I'm willing to accept that. But I did what I felt I needed to do, and it was, a long time coming. And he said, "Fire you?" He said, "Absolutely not. Stay out here. I'm going to go handle this." And he walked to his table, and he told him to get up in the middle of his dinner and get out of the restaurant and don't ever come back. And that was the last time that I've seen him.
Wow. Wow. Lisa, that's huge. And look, you're doing amazing. Thank you for sharing. And the power and the impact of that, you had not one but two people and more, but two quite strong people, including your mum, who were happy to take action. And I think that's so vindicating and validating because we don't often see that or hear about that. So I'm happy for you. That's incredible. So, as we now move on through other parts of your life, tell us about you as, an adult from sort of your 20s and 30s, what was happening in your life. And I know that you are a pilot because we introduced you as that. So I'd like to hear, what are you doing now? We're about halfway through the interview. Let's talk Lisa, the survivor, the pilot, the Metastatic
Sure.
breast cancer warrior. Wow.
Yeah, I know. A lot going on. Um, yeah, so I tried to move on with my life and put the pieces back together as best I could. But my teenage years was sort of a bit of rebellion, and just I didn't really understand the feelings or how to deal with them. Um, and I moved into my 20s sort of in the same way, just kind of lost. I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, which is, a big hospitality town. And so I grew up in bars and restaurants and worked in them all through my 20s. Probably drank a bit too much, and just sort of went where the wind blew. And then as I turned 30, I found aviation. Um, and I went and did a what's called a discovery flight. I went to a local flight school, and told them I had heard about this thing where you could do a discovery flight, and they said absolutely. So we sat down, It was a female instructor, and she sat me down and gave me the basics of flight on the ground. And then we walked out onto the ramp to a helicopter, and she gave me the basics of a helicopter as we walked around it. And then we got into the cockpit. She explained the basics of the cockpit, the controls, and said, once we're in the air, I'm going to give the controls to you. And so we did. We went up, we went straight into the air, hovered, and as soon as we were in the air, she handed me the controls one by one. And from that point, I was hooked. I thought it was the most amazing thing. And I didn't know what to do from there, but I knew that was what I was meant to be doing. Um, so I left that day and went and researched and um, got a little deflated when I found out how much it cost, but it didn't stop me. I I started working at what's called an FBO, where the private jets fly in and get fuel and pick up their passengers and things like that to start learning aviation. I didn't know anything about it. And I would talk to every pilot that landed and try to pick their brains if they were nice enough and let me. Just, asked endless questions, tried to get it all the advice I could. And at the same time, I started taking flight lessons as much as I could afford. So I would work, I was probably working, you know, close to 60 hours a week. And whenever I could fit in a flight lesson, I would. And I also started taking online classes towards a bachelor's degree in aviation. So I just piled it all on and never looked back and dove into it. And it led me to the job that I have now. I fly a couple of different airplanes. I rose up through the ranks of my company. I started out as second in command and then got promoted to pilot in command. And then a standards captain, which is sort of somebody that oversees a group of pilots, and then rose to assistant chief pilot and oversaw um, about 100 plus pilots. So I've really enjoyed my career. The other puzzle piece to that is that in January of 2020, my wife and I were living in San Juan, Puerto Rico for my job. We have a base down in San Juan, so we would fly all through the Caribbean. So I was down there for the winter season, and my wife was pregnant at the time, and I found out that I was diagnosed with stage one breast cancer. So I went through treatment. I got grounded from flying for, probably about 8 months and got right back to it as soon as I could. We moved up here to Connecticut from Louisiana after that. And yeah, for 4 years, I've just been enjoying flying around, mentoring other pilots, and living life. And fast forward to last year, my wife was pregnant again with our second son. And in May in 2024, I found out that I now have stage four metastatic breast cancer. And so I grounded again as a pilot. And for the past year, I've been going through treatment, but also I feel like I missed a message the first time around, and I began to pay more attention to my life and turn around and face my demons so that I could heal. I feel like my past traumas have got me here, and so I've really been focusing on healing and therapy and a bunch of other ways, but one of those things is sharing my story to help others. And I feel like that's also been helping me heal too.
So, well, it's a big, big life you are living, and full credit to you, Lisa, for trying to face into and deal with several layers actually of this trauma. And I hear what you're saying. I think, sometimes when trauma is stored in the body, it can impact the cells in the body as well. And, I know there's a book, The Body Never Forgets, and it doesn't. But, for you facing into this, what have some of your lessons been in terms of paying attention, as you say, to your life?
I've had some really down moments, especially after the second diagnosis. And when sort of my life was put in front of me, it just made me look at everything like, what's still in my hands? What can I do? And I wish I would have focused on this sooner, but this was my wake up call, and this was the way that my body wanted to tell me you need to deal with this. Um, but I encourage others, I write about it, and I encourage others to face it and not let it fester. And I'd imagine it's even worse for people that don't have anybody to support them or that believe them.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so important to find the proper way, the healthy way, and get support to be able to face this in a safe environment and kind of pick through it. And I don't know that there's other, ever like getting to the other side of it, but I do know that the more I talk about it, the easier that gets. And, um, I talk to my younger self and tell her that she's okay now and that I have her. And, I think that kind of was a healing moment for me. Um, it was very emotional the first time I did it, but it's helped.
Yeah. It's a big thing you face into when you're facing into your own mortality. And I guess when you said earlier about you didn't get the message the first time around, I guess, as I'm thinking for our survivors as well, not dealing with it doesn't mean it goes away. And I liken it to the first time we might get a little, you need to deal with me. The second time we might get a bit of a shoulder tap. The third time we might start getting bashed over the head. And I just wonder, with full respect, whether being diagnosed with that stage one breast cancer initially was, as you've reflected on, and maybe a message. Had you, up until that point, not been able to or not done any therapy or work on the trauma?
That's correct. I buried it so deep and
Yeah.
I threw myself into my career, work, anything that I could to not face it, really.
Okay.
I tried to stuff it way down and hope it would just go away. But obviously that doesn't happen and it never did. And so I'm one of the ones that got beat over the head, like you
Yeah.
have to deal with this.
Yeah. Did you find that it was because of course it's always showing itself when we look back, we can see it, can't we, Lisa? And I guess in what ways were you noticing it was showing itself to you when it was being undealt with? Like
You
what?
know, I think in my relationship choices, prior to meeting my wife, um, just sort of not thinking I was worthy of a lot of things and just being really hard on myself and other times, um, became a perfectionist and anything that was less than perfection, I would just beat myself up so much. But there was a lot of things, unhealthy habits that I had developed over the years from stuffing that down. Um, One of them is not showing emotion. And, I would even say crying doesn't solve anything. And now I'm learning through therapy and releasing all of this trauma that, yes, it does. You need to cry. You need to let it out. It's your body, healing essentially.
Yeah,
So I'm almost grateful that I was beaten over the head, that I have the opportunity to face this and heal and now help other people.
yeah. Yes, and it's big work that you do because you've had to learn the hard way, which a lot of us as survivors do. And I was also wondering about the work ethic for you, the fact that I heard you say 60 hours a week, and I'm thinking, uh-huh. That's there we have it. We all two survivors everywhere. We push ourselves so hard, and
Yes.
yeah. So I hear you, and I applaud your courage because you're dealing with things on so many different levels. As we're talking about this, I'm wondering how kind of you met your lovely wife. Was that something that came about once you'd begun the healing journey, or how did that manifest?
No, that was right after I started flight training. And we had actually were both from New Orleans, Louisiana, and she uh we sort of knew each other for about 12 years or so, just from friend of a friend kind of a thing, acquaintances, but I didn't really know a lot about her. But we ended up standing in a mutual friend's wedding and got to chatting and kind of hit it off. But I think being with her started my healing journey now that I think about it, because I, like other survivors, never trusted anybody since my childhood, and not even myself, because I feel like I betrayed myself. I didn't see things, or I didn't stop things, or whatever. I can't trust my own intuition. So I didn't trust anybody, but she showed me that I could trust her over time. It was like, the scared puppy that you just need to keep trying with, and more I would open up. And so in that way, I think she did start my healing journey. It took me getting beat over the head to continue with it and, truly dive into it. But with her support, you know, I felt like I could do that. If I didn't have her, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
She's
yeah, yeah.
she's a rock.
And look, I'm so grateful you have her in your life. That's wonderful. I guess one of the things you said I want to come back to, if okay, which is that, you learned not to trust yourself or trust your own intuition. And I like to think of that as magical thinking because as a child at the age of 10, which is when it all began, the grooming, the gaslighting, the manipulation, and then the abuse, all began. As a child, as a 10-year-old, there is no ability to withstand that or understand that or make a stand on that. And I hope you liking the use of the word stand. But the
Yeah.
point is, we don't have that cognition. We don't have the awareness or the courage. So I'm just going to slightly challenge you on not being too hard on you in that space. You couldn't have. And I know you couldn't have because you didn't. And Lisa, that is the story of most survivors across the world. We were children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to honor the child in you and survivors watching, honor the beautiful child in you and know that child did the very best they had with what they could. And it's really powerful. And today, look at the warrior uh, inside of all of us. And Lisa, when you consider what you've come through and what you've been able to go on to do, this has become, I suspect, your life's purpose.
Yes, I would agree.
Mm. So, I believe you're writing a book. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yes. I am almost finished the first rough draft of my memoir. Um, and my goal when I started writing it was to help myself heal. And I realized, you know, by stuffing down these traumas, I stuffed creativity down. And once I started healing and releasing all of these things, all of my creativity came flooding forward. And I love to write. And so I've been doing that a lot over the past year. I've had a lot of time. But I started writing for me, and then um, it's turning into a project that I hope will help at least one other person, but I hope will help many people to hear my story, and hopefully I can give some good advice at the end of it that that'll, carry on. And like I said, I hope it just helps at least one person. That to me will be a success.
Well, I think the synergy and on this channel, there is a huge survivor family, and I'm sure there will be your words will resonate. And are you able to tell us the name of the book and when you're hoping to have it published by?
I am hoping to have it published by the end of the year, but we'll see. I have some other projects that are kind of coming up. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Susan G. Komen, but they're a big breast cancer organization here in the States. And so I've partnered with them and hopefully doing some cool things. But hopefully by the end of the year, the book will be fully done and published. But as of right now, it's the title of the book is Didn't See That Coming.
Wow.
And it's just a compilation of a lot of um, traumas, but other stories throughout my lifetime and up to present.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a really apt title, actually. I love it. And, it's the power of the word, the power of releasing onto paper is, or through the laptop computer that you use, is it's very powerful and healing. It's so cathartic and
It really is.
yeah, it may bring up stuff for you you hadn't realized, but I suspect you're finding that. So, Lisa, we are going to put all your details in the show notes below. But can you tell us, please, just say it verbally, how people can find you and get in contact with you?
Yes, I have a website that's, sort of in the works that hopefully will be up and running here in the next week. We can put that link at the bottom. That'd be great. Um, I have a Substack publication where I write essays and ongoings about cancer and other things that I feel like would help other people. Um, and also on social media, I have Instagram and Facebook as well.
It's amazing. So there's lots of ways people can find you, follow you, connect in with you, and learn more about
Yes.
you as Lisa. So, just as we're going into the last couple of minutes, do you have any tips you would like to give our amazing survivor family watching?
Yeah. I would say if you haven't yet started the healing process, try. Even if it's a small step, anything towards facing those demons before they're beating you over the head, with a bad sickness or whatever else. Um, I think it's important that we don't stuff them down and that we don't try to hide it because it doesn't go away. Like you said, it's still there and it's one way or another, it's going to come out.
Yeah,
Um, so yourself into a safe environment and have support where you can sort through it. And it's not your fault. And
yeah,
unfortunately, it's our responsibility to deal with it.
yeah. I hear you. Thank you so much, Lisa. Please stay right there. Audience, just the power of the messaging through having Lisa with us is so important and impactful. She said several things that have stuck with me, but one in particular was talking about the impact of the abuse and how it showed itself through her relationship choices. And I think that's a powerful reminder for us that sometimes what we do is we can continue, not the abuse, but the impact of the abuse through not feeling good enough or safe enough, and we can attract people that aren't good for us. So I think that's really important and powerful. So big thanks to Lisa. And as we're closing off, just wanted to say, lovely survivors, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.